Hey, everybody. Today we have for you podcast number 103. Today's podcast is titled, Whose Rhythms Do You Follow? Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. We are Dr. Pete and Sandy Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network podcast, where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you are called to lead. And we all want to take that moment, the beginning of the podcast, where we always thank our listeners. So thank you very much. We're very grateful for you.
Yes, thank you for your comments and encouragement each week.
Yeah, and thank you for all you new listeners that just joined in recently. I saw somebody mention that they stumbled accidentally upon this podcast. There is no accident. At least I'd like to think that you found this podcast because it was something that you needed. So, and I noticed that comment, they said that they're really looking forward to more content. So, yes, we're producing more content each and every week. So this week is no exception. We have a really good podcast put together for you today. And we do have a backstory today, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We have quite a backstory. Well, how would you describe the backstory today? And I'll add to it.
Well, over the long weekend, we were invited down to the very southern western corner of Virginia and spent some time with chiropractic friends and their families. And it was just an awesome time along a river, had lots of outdoor time and just great conversation.
I think they consider it a lake.
Yeah. It's like a river that widens to a lake, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lake that was created by damming a river.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so there's a river that flows into it.
not that I have to correct you. It's just I don't want them to be like, "Hey, it's a lake," you know. But anyway, yes, we spent some time with dear friends of ours. The Brown family welcomed us into their home, and it was really good. We had a great time. But one of the cool things was that they invited us to attend church with them in Southwest Virginia, which is part of Appalachia. I don't have a real good accent there, but anyway, it was really unique. How would you describe that church that we went to?
Oh, the name of the church was Simple Rhythms, is how we came across our topic or title for today's podcast. And we were asking our Timothy and Grace on our way home, what was the highlight of the weekend? And Grace was like, the jet ski, absolutely the jet ski. And Timothy said their church service, because it was so unique to us. Southern gospel style music, steel guitar. Timothy was just enthralled with it all. A young guy on a banjo, normally plays the banjo. So it was just a different style for us, and we enjoyed being a part of that service.
Yeah, it was almost like listening to bluegrass music.
Yeah.
But that was cool, but it was still worshipful, and I got a lot of the message, which was really cool. So it was funny because they had their regular pastor actually listens to the podcast. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, so he was upset he was going to be out of town because he wanted to meet us.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and their associate pastor, Pastor Luke, he delivered a great message about honor and how it pertains to our family and our roots. And so, that brings us to where we are now. Labor Day is over with, and we're driving back, and we're just, whenever you're coming back into your life after being away, you start to think about all the things that you have to do when you get back, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what you've been doing all day?
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing all day. And we're preparing for that next season, and that's kind of leads us into this first point.
Mm-hmm. The first point is deep clean. And so, we got back at midnight, 12 hours in the car, could not wait to just be active this morning. So new season. Grace is jumping back into our homeschool work, and I needed to clean the house. First thing, we had the dogs here taken care of by someone while we were away. Totally needed to, vacuum and mop. So as I'm doing that, I'm thinking about the podcast, and this point came to me like, where did all these cobwebs come from in the house? And I'm thinking like it's a season of life where I'm thinking of cobwebs like in my mind, where cobwebs have settled in my mindset that I need to address. My physical habits like exercise, that was helpful being around these positive friends and family this weekend, very active. One of the women, one of our friends, and a couple of the guys too are rucking. I didn't know much about rucking, and I wanted to start rucking, adding weight to my walks. And they talked about the health benefits of that. So I guess like looking at the cobwebs that have settled in over maybe the summer season that you want to address as we go into fall, whether it be spiritual area of your life or mental, different, challenges you want to learn something new, like clear out the cobwebs and look for opportunity.
Yeah. Excellent.
Anything you wanted to add with that?
Not really. I think you hit it really well. How do these things accumulate? That like, where does all this stuff happen? Like how does it all show up in your life? And it's a lot of times it's just very unintentional things that you didn't intend that just kind of crop up that you have to like, why am I doing this? I never intended to do this. I need to stop this because it's not something I intended to. I just got distracted or sidetracked and let down that road. And that's kind of how cobwebs show up. That's how things get out of order.
Well, and the word you use like without intention, and that's so true. Like I need to put intention in different areas. That's what has been lacking is the intention. Well,
our attention is being directed in a lot of ways. It's being pulled in a lot of different directions. So you've got to really be mindful or aware of that for sure. Yeah. So it brings us to point number 2, unique times to connect and relational opportunities. This was also something you came up with.
Yeah, as I was reflecting on our drive yesterday, we decided to come back all in one stretch, 12 hours, which is a long time in the car. I don't love being in the car that long. And I said to Pete before we left, one condition, you will let Timothy and I take a turn driving. It's just a long time to be a passenger. And he's like, okay, I agree, because he likes to be the driver. And so I had taken a turn, and I was just kind of waiting. I was wondering how Pete would feel about letting Timothy drive. Sometimes there's lots of traffic, and we're not, used to the highway that we're on. And so anyway, Pete did give Tim the opportunity to drive, and I was sitting in the back seat, just loving observing them. They're trying to keep each other awake. They're singing at the top of their lungs these songs, and it just brought a huge smile watching them have this time together. And for me, like watching Timothy being an adult with his dad, like I thought how impactful it was. Like, first of all, like Pete showed him that he trusted him enough to let him drive in a different state, lots of traffic. It was night, it was dark. Not criticizing his driving, and just different lessons. And I was like, I don't think Pete realized like the opportunity that he gave him to be a young man next to his dad versus, a young son. So I thought that was powerful, the opportunity that presented itself in our travels. And I was also thinking like relational opportunities. This time we spent with Dr. Chris and Melissa and Dr. Janopoulos and his wife, Maria, they're just really positive influences in our lives and our children's lives. And like over the course of the weekend, I heard Dr. Janopoulos talking to Timothy about, you have a really great voice. Have you ever considered voice acting or voiceover, and encouraging him in that? And Dr. Chris offering our son Luke, who's in chiropractic college, the opportunity to come and mentor under him when he's in his peak time of, ready to get into practice. And those opportunities that we can provide for our kids or other people in our lives by introducing them to people who are going to raise the bar for them and encourage them in ways that we may not be, or we are, but coming alongside and building up our own kids, or I guess was one of the points I was thinking of.
Well, I think this is a really great a great point, and it kind of crosses over a bunch of points that we've had in the past, which is you have to be intentional with where you plan to hang out, and who you want to surround yourself with. So that's one thing out of this one point that I think is repeated here. Another thing is what you say, what comes out of your mouth, your words that you say, either build people up or it tears them down. And that was the thing that you saw, was that the words coming out of people's mouths were building our kids up in what they said. And likewise, you seeing like me allowing Tim to drive. Well, I thought of my father at that same stage, like allowing me to drive him to Florida. And I remember that, and him always telling me to slow down, go slow, slow down. And I'm telling Timothy to speed up. I'm like, you could drive faster. I'm like, you could set the cruise, a little bit higher than what you got to set at, buddy. And he's like, oh, okay. You don't have to tell me again, until he's like turning making the car go. I'm always, wanting to drive faster and faster. My dad was always wanting to slow down, but
Tim is very much like your dad.
Yes,
isn't he?
very much
slower pace.
Yep, slower pace. But either way, you gotta look for these opportunities. Not every day can be just another day, or it can be a day of opportunity. So look for those. Be mindful of those as well.
And I think tying it into the service that we attended, Pastor Luke spoke about honor, which Pete mentioned, and that just kept, I think, coming up to all of us over the weekend, and watching these young adults, our children, interact with each other, interact with the other adults that were there for the weekend, and how they've been taught and they honor their parents, they honor God, and how they're honoring other adults in their way they speak with them and the way they listen and engage. And so we were just feeling so blessed that we have these roots that run deep, and have provided well for our children.
Yeah, for sure. That brings us to a totally different topic. If we're going to switch gears to number 3, is it really cold and flu season? We talk about these different rhythms that we follow, and you got on this topic as well, because I think it was Timothy said, before I go back to school, I want to get some vitamins.
Yeah. And Grace felt a tickle in her throat, and she was gargling with some On Guard this morning. She's like, I don't want to get sick during soccer season. So it's on everyone's mind that the sickness season is coming.
Right. So, yeah. And this is like, what rhythms do you follow? Do you follow the this idea that as we get into fall and winter, that that's just a normal thing that you get sick, like you're supposed to get sick, or you have to be afraid like that you might get sick, like it's nothing in your control whatsoever. That's what I think of when I hear people talk about this cold and flu season, and I know doctors really talk about it. It's in advertisements on television all the time. It's cold and flu season. Be sure to get your, whatever, XYZ thing. And at the end of the day, whose responsibility is your own health? It's always comes back to you. How about this is the season when you need more rest? You need to get your sleep. Like daylight is less. So our natural rhythm is that we need more sleep. We really should be going to bed when the sun goes down or close to it, and we should be waking up when the sun rises, which means that if you live where we live in New York State, that means your amount of sleep should escalate during these times when we're getting further, the sun's getting further and further away from us. But that doesn't usually happen because we have this schedule that we have to keep. So we're waking in the dark, and we're working part of our day in the dark, and then we're missing the daylight because we're at work or we're inside because it's cold, and then we're going home in the dark, and we're going to bed, and it's like we're operating in the dark. If you live in Alaska, you're part of the year it's 24 hours of darkness. So what's your vitamin D intake, to offset that lack of sunlight? Because I think that has a greater impact on you than you really understand, because we're totally not following the natural rhythms that God put in place for us to follow. So is it really cold and flu season? Well, a lot of people do get sick when there's less sunlight and when our activity levels go down. So exercise goes down, people overeat when they're bored. So all of these things create a perfect storm. You throw in some holidays where people are overeating again, getting less exercise, eating more sweets, eating more sugar. And yeah, it's no wonder that after Halloween, kids get sick. After Thanksgiving, people get sick. And after Christmas, everybody gets sick. And then they're broke. And it's like, that's the rhythm. Do you want to follow that rhythm? Or do you want to honor, what your body was supposed to operate under, and give your body more rest, give your body more sunlight, give your body more exercise, and
Fuel.
don't follow the rhythm of the culture. Follow the rhythm that God set in place for you.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay. So that brings us to point number 4.
Simple rhythm.
Which is the name of the church we went to, Simple Rhythms. So we looked up some definitions. First, we looked up rhythm, didn't we?
Right.
What'd you have for that?
Well, rhythm was strong. I'm going to look it up here. Regular, repeated, a pattern. There was order to it. But then interesting, alternation of strong and weak.
Right. Yeah. So something has some level of consistency to it, right? So I think we all get that a rhythm is like that. But a simple rhythm is something that's the word that I focused in on when I thought about that. Simple rhythms. Well, simple it means it doesn't have to be complicated. And I've always thought that people seem to put more value on things that are really complicated and less value on things that are simple. When in reality, what I find to be more accurate is that the simple things actually work better, last longer, and tend to be more true. And the complicated things have usually a greater propensity to fall apart, not work correctly, need more troubleshooting, and are usually way more expensive and ultimately more frustrating. So that's how I look at that. So like, I'd rather look for something that is simple rather than complicated. Here's the trouble, though, is that we seek these elaborate things because we think that they're sexy. We think that they're really flashy, and that's simple is not that. Simple can seem actually, may even seem mundane or dull, like boring, right? That's simple. But the mundane, the boring, those simple rhythms are what really, in my mind, carry way more weight and should be taken way more seriously, which is honoring your body. And if you look up the Hebrew for honor, it actually talks about where that word comes from. I think it's kavod.
Yeah, that's what Pastor Luke was
and it means like it carries weight.
Yes, very heavy.
It carries weight. It's heavy. And it should be taken seriously, not lightly. So think about that with the rhythms of your life. They may be very simple, and they may seem boring, and they may seem mundane, but the weight that they carry, if you honor them, can be extremely heavy and important.
The word that what I'm thinking of is they're foundational. Like I think of the sermon that was given this Sunday was all about the family unit, really. And that's foundational. So you might think it's simple, and the message was fairly simple, but if we get that part of the foundation straight and solid and biblical, that affects so much more all the way up, right? So simple, I think, foundational rhythm.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so that brings us to point number 5, and this kind of just, I don't know, jumped out at me when we were talking about these 4 points, and I went back to a verse in the Bible, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it's from Ecclesiastes, and it basically, King Solomon says, "There's nothing new under the sun." And if you read that whole chapter, you'll see it's like this. He talks about all these things that happen in nature and like in life that you just see they seem to come and go, and it makes it seem like there's no point to anything. Like, the rivers all flow to the ocean, but they never fill up. Like they're always the same. They never overflow or anything like that. Like there's a cycle and a rhythm to everything. That's what it made me think of, was the cycle and rhythm to everything. And it may seem meaningless. And then I think about like us and the things that we do, the toil that we go through day in and day out. Like, are those actions meaningless, or do they have meaning? And it depends on whose rhythm you follow. I really think that it comes down to whose rhythm do you follow? That's the question today of the podcast. Do you follow your own rhythms, or do you follow God's rhythms? Because you more than likely in our culture have been taught to follow the rhythms of this world, or man's rhythms. And if you look at Hollywood or the media, they're going to tell you to follow your own truth, right? Like that's this new thing now that is like, I'll say it. It seems it's very woke to me. It's like, follow your own truth. Like, what does that mean? You don't get to decide what's true and not true, but they want you to think that that's an okay thing to do. And that's like saying that, you know what, you're God? Like, that's not true. That's not true at all. That's a slippery slope, right? So what is true is the word of God, and that's what's preached. That's what's written in Scripture for us to follow. It's a simple rule book, really. It's a simple instructional manual for living life while we are here, but there's a bigger purpose behind it with what comes after this life. This kingdom, this life here is nothing like the kingdom to come, right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking like letting God's rhythm become your rhythm, like own it, really learn it, let it just become indwelling in you.
Yeah. It also brought me back to thinking about like Cain and Abel, and how, Cain and Abel were so different, but they were like the first people that were like Adam and Eve, God created, but then there was Cain and Abel. And Cain was this brother that was never happy with his brother Abel. And Abel, everything seemed to go really well in Abel's life for him. Everything that he was almost like he had the Midas touch, like everything turned to more things for him. And he did things like very honorably, and he did things the way he was supposed to, the way God wanted him to do things, and God rewarded him. And his brother Cain was jealous of all of this, and he complained to God about it. Like I do a bunch of things and you don't reward me like he's like this jealous brother. And God said, well, it's your own fault. It's because of you're not really putting everything into this. You're not behaving like your brother, and it's your own fault. You have to look inwardly at your own actions. You have to take responsibility for it. And it's the last thing he wanted to hear. And all that did was make him mad. So he went and he literally killed his brother. And and it's not just like this dark story of a brother killing a brother, but what he did was he killed what was beautiful, what was great. He killed the ideal, right? So God created this ideal, and that was Abel, and Cain killed that because he couldn't be that. He never lived up to it, and so he tried to snuff it out. And that's really what that is going on in our culture today. It's a replay of more of that, and you just have to see it for what it is. So that's why to aim upward, to really understand that God has called you to be more than what is of this world. The expectations of this world, like what people have expectations on you, are not what God has for expectations for you. He wants you to follow his son. That's really what it comes down to. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, it's great.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. That's a wrap on this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Be sure to tune in each and every week so you can stay connected, be inspired, and keep tripping away those limitations and all that other stuff we say at the end of the podcast that I totally forgot my line. But keep moving toward your best life.
Okay. Have a great week and follow that rhythm.
Yes, we'll see you soon.